Hey guys, what's going on? Laying back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Gray Man. The Gray Man is an American action thriller based on the novel of the same name, and tells the story of Sierra 6, the most skilled operative in all of the CIA, working as a gray man who performs deep cover operations for the organization. As he carries out a routine mission, he discovers intel which uncovers secrets that incriminate higher-ups in the CIA. 6 finds a target on his back soon after, as a bounty is placed on him by a psychopathic former colleague, which sets off a global manhunt. 6 must race across Europe to gather more intel and rescue his former handler, while avoiding international assassins who are after his bounty. With so many big names and action set pieces behind this movie, it makes sense as to why it's been hyped for so long, and for the most part it does live up to expectations. There are problems with pacing and it's not exactly original, but as far as being a pure action movie is concerned, The Gray Man does its job well. Ryan Gosling plays the lead role of Sierra 6, also known as Court Gentry in the novels. His character has a mysterious past that makes it easy to become invested in him from the beginning. Between his masterful skills in combat operations and his initial lack of family background, he's a peculiar enigma who easily holds the viewer's attention. I do wish there were a few more details revealed about his character later on than what we're given, but the lack of info does make some sense given his espionage background, and Gosling's casual charm helps elevate 6 to being more than just another bog-standard action hero. His counterpart Lloyd Hansen, who's played by Chris Evans, is also lacking a bit in depth, but makes up for it with a ton of personality. His crazed nature flares up during the right times whenever 6 is able to get the upper hand, and it's hilarious to watch him fly off the handle. However, he doesn't come across as just another lunatic. Evans is able to balance the right amounts of silly and serious, depending when a scene calls for either mood. And just like his Captain America movies in the past, he's still able to hold his own in the action scenes very well, making him an excellent villain to go toe-to-toe with 6. One character that surprised me with how much I enjoyed her was Miranda, who's played by Ana de Armas. She's a great sidekick who does her best to help 6 without necessarily getting in his way, while also having a bit of her own agenda. And like Evan, she's also great in the action scenes. I always thought she was underused in No Time to Die, so it's good to see her getting more time to shine with the action here. Most of the characters in general were good in how they were used. They all have their role to play in the story and are performed by a variety of talents, including Jessica Henwick, Regé-Jean Page, and Billy Bob Thornton, just to name a few. Apart from the action, the ensemble cast was probably the best thing about the movie. Thornton's character as 6's handler in particular has a subplot which adds emotional nuance to the story, allowing some much needed development for 6 as a character and making the movie more interesting when it's taking a break from the action. I also liked seeing the web of deception that 6 has to weave his way through as he figures out the significance of the intel and what's happening around him. 6 has a hard time trusting even those he works with, which keeps the tension and stakes high as he goes about piecing things together. Despite the movie's honest attempts to avoid being formulaic though, the story ends up being just that. Certain characters exist only to steer 6 in the right direction before they're killed off, and the entire movie revolves around two sides vying for control over a MacGuffin. The movie does enough to shake things up a bit, but it's still disappointing with how ordinary it ended up being. If there's one thing that helps give the movie its identity though, it's the action scenes. It goes without saying that there are some standards to live up to for a movie directed by the Russo brothers, and on this front, The Gray Man definitely delivers. The sheer variety of action set pieces here is almost overwhelming, mostly featuring a mix of good old-fashioned brawls with excellent stunt work that changes in each scene, and high-octane gunfights where characters duck, dive, and crawl for cover and have to improvise their way out of hairy situations. The sound design for these action scenes are crisp and packed with punchy sound effects that help immerse the audience, and I'm also happy to say that the action, with the exception of one scene, is always clearly visible on camera, so the stunts can be better appreciated than it would have been if it were all filmed in close-up shaky cam. That one scene I mentioned was the only one I couldn't stand watching. Everything in it is filmed up close, the CGI is washed out, and the amount of motion blur used during the brawl in it was a sight for sore eyes, but aside from that, the rest of the action was great. The cinematography in general was quite enjoyable too. It's clear that the film crew had a ton of fun with planning the shots, with some scenes using drone shots that move along with the characters as they run to or from danger, which was a bit excessive at times, but still did a good job at immersing me into a tense moment. My favorite action scene, without a doubt, has to be the tram scene in Prague. 6 has to deal with armed goons on and outside of the train, while Miranda gets involved in a car chase next to him and tries to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Cars get smashed to pieces, buildings blow up, and the CGI for everything that happens is actually well done. There's so much mayhem that happens in this part, and it's all presented coherently. I love it. The breakneck pacing of this movie is something I noticed fairly early on. On one hand, its fast-paced nature does make the action scenes more visceral and gets the adrenaline pumping with how fast and furious they end up being. But on the other hand, the pacing feels off when it comes to the more plot-related scenes. 6 goes from one European locale to another for what only feels like a few minutes each time, which doesn't leave much time to figure out what's going on. There were a few times when I looked away while watching, and I had to rewind a bit because I missed a plot point that the movie brushes past. I don't necessarily knock the movie for being more action-oriented, as that's clearly where the priority was, but it would have been nice for it to slow down a bit to allow the audience to digest plot points, instead of constantly jumping around so much. The movie attempts to add more entertainment value through comedy, but it doesn't work. It mostly consists of bad joke dialogue that made me feel embarrassed for the actors for having to say them out loud, especially when Henwick and Evans' characters talk about punching dicks. This movie was written by the same writers who wrote the Avengers movies, and I think they got a little carried away with what they make people say here. Fortunately, it's easier to forget about what people say when one is busy admiring all of the scenery. The large number of international locations in the movie helps keep the story fresh and exciting as it moves along, with some scenes featuring some stellar production design. The opening scene is perhaps the most stunning, showcasing beautiful lighting, pyrotechnics, and just about any other aesthetic one can think of. The movie is not afraid to be labeled as eye candy, although its plot does deserve some credit for being able to hold up as well as it does considering its pacing issues. I do find it a bit weird that a deep cover CIA gray man agent can get away with causing so much ruckus, but I don't mind suspending some level of disbelief if it allows me to enjoy it for what it is. Overall, The Gray Man is a solid action flick that is lacking strength with its story, but nails it in just about every other element. If you're an adrenaline junkie looking for a fast-paced thrill ride with little to no plot exposition, you should definitely check this one out. Although the story could have been better, the action and overall visual presentation makes up for it, and I anticipate that it'll improve more with this movie setting the stage for inevitable sequels to follow. I'm not sure if this was worth Netflix spending $200 million on, but the filmmakers sure put every one of those dollars to good use. What did you think about this movie? Were you blown away by the variety and intensity of the action, or were you also disappointed by the story? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's gonna wrap up my review of The Gray Man. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Argentinian crime drama, Pipa. Bye bye!